Welcome on into 19 on the Clock, your Tri-State High School and College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pushkar. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Jackson McCarty. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a while.
It's been about 2 weeks,
yes,
but a little bit about a week for the fans out there.
Yeah. The behind the scenes we did week before last podcast on Saturday before I went on vacation.
Yep.
Then Brad selfishly took a week off for his birthday.
How dare I?
I know, it just the worst. It's a miracle that this country's still afloat. But but no, we're back on normal schedules now.
I take that week off, and then the Commanders win a playoff game.
Hey,
I mean, geez.
We just keep winning them, man. This podcast will very quickly become a Commanders podcast if you get me started on this road. So do not.
Fair enough.
But
well, let's get you started on a different road.
Yeah,
man.
there we go.
What
a transition. We're back, baby.
Obviously, this week we had the national championship game.
Yep.
I'm gonna curveball you because I know we said let's talk about other stuff, but I did want to talk
Yep.
about this first.
100%.
Because the Ohio State Buckeyes did beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a close game.
And they kind of beat themselves, too.
Absolutely.
Because watching that game, there was never really a point in it where I was just like, oh, Notre Dame's making a comeback. This was, oh, how is this Ohio State team kind of letting the reins go the later this thing goes? And eventually they still, kept it where it needed to be. But
yes, and I think a lot of, I know there was like a little bit of criticism for the call to single man coverage of Jeremiah Smith in the fourth quarter. That was the pass that you came over and talked to me about, and I was like, oh, look, there it is playing on ESPN on the TV behind us.
Yeah, we were trying to exactly locate where it was happening, and then we both happened to turn around, and it is just full replay, not even 4 feet away from us.
Yeah, but if you watched it at home, it was 6 minutes left, deep ball from Will Howard to Jeremiah Smith, floats it over the defender. Beautiful play. A lot of people are like, why would you put single man coverage on Jeremiah Smith and play like that?
That's a natural question.
But Notre Dame was playing a really good blitz, and Will Howard just played it out even better.
Yeah.
I also think that the coverage was good. It was a little bit of Jeremiah Smith playing into the coverage so well to lose it. And I think that
he kind of curved his route back out to
he came in
the sideline,
the corner, and then went back out, and the corner already adjusted and wasn't ready to turn.
Right,
corner, things like that.
Corner thought it was a go, and all of a sudden he's got 4 foot of distance between them. And when you have a playmaker like Jeremiah Smith, 4 feet is honestly 3.5 too many.
Yes, and the fun thing about having a playmaker like Jeremiah Smith is you're going to have him for 2 more years.
Yeah.
So,
and only 2 more years, to be perfectly honest
absolutely.
with you. There's no way he stays beyond the point he has to.
He is arguably the best wide receiver in college football right now. So it'll be fun to watch that. And obviously it'll be really fun to see who replaces Ryan Day, since all the fans, just a month or two ago wanted him fired. So obviously you still have to get a new coach.
I thought I saw Urban at CVG.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on the drive into work.
Yeah, just casual.
But no, it is funny because I do think that sect of fans that was like, we need to get rid of Ryan Day, is not going quietly.
No, I don't even think they've gone away.
No,
that's the fun part.
Well, not to say that you should fire your national champion coach. That's ridiculous. But in their defense somewhat, to play devil's advocate, that Ohio State versus themselves thing I was talking about, that falls on Ryan Day. That's his coaching staff. That's his, the folks that were kind of letting that slip. So obviously it didn't end up blowing up in his face, but it was absolutely a scary moment and something you don't want to see happening from your team.
I do think that this game kind of made him, I think from this he's going to learn to be more of a risk taker again.
Yeah.
Make those kind of wild calls that I think he did under Urban, and now it's just like, oh, you're the guy in charge. You get to make those calls, and don't try to play it as safe. So.
Well, and he hired Captain Wild as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly is quite literally the most insane play caller I've ever seen, and so he leaned into that, and then he kind of started going away from it. So he just needs to find some consistency in that range, at least, for my 2 cents.
Absolutely. So. Obviously, it's January now. We'll pick this back up.
Revisit this in a couple months.
Like 6-7 months, I think.
No, we'll definitely be talking about it more just because that's what happens. But and once most sports start dying down in that spring, summertime, we'll I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit.
Summer's going to be a fun adventure for us.
Yes.
Because we do not have a plan yet.
No, we do not. But stick around and you'll figure out what we figure out along the way.
You'll figure it out at the same time we do. So
listen, if the high school basketball coverage didn't tell you that we're just kind of winging it and trying to figure out what works, we can't. You know what I mean? There's no sign that's going to prepare you for the summer.
Speaking of winging it with high school basketball
there
coverage.
We go. Slight format change again.
So yeah, you covered Indiana last week.
Yep.
We went through all the Ohio teams in the Tri-State. So let's move over to Kentucky.
Yes.
And a little bit behind the scenes, you do have this broken down into basically top teams of Region 8, Region 9 for both the boys and girls side. We're going to split this up over 2 weeks, just to kind of even out that way. So let's start with the boys.
Yes.
Who do you have for this week? And I know you have a little bit of context for why you're picking these teams this week. So.
Yeah, and you know, to be clear, we are still going to have Brad do his picks, but this, instead of who's going to win your conference or whatever, Brad's going to tell me who he thinks of these options is most poised for a deep playoff run.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's not going to be, like for example, we've got Beechwood and Walton Verona because they're both playing in the A Classic, I believe it's called, or the I have the name somewhere in these notes, but it's kind of a tricky all-A something or another. Yes. They're both playing in that tournament. We'll be talking about them, but if Walton Verona has fewer wins in the season, that doesn't mean it's over. Brad's got until the whole thing is done for his predictions to be right here.
Yes.
Also, this one won't backfire on me near as hard because it's not conference. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So if somebody that was not listed, I'm kind of still safe. So that's nice.
Okay.
Little job protection. But okay, I did already kind of spoil it a little bit. I'll start with Beechwood, the Tigers, their boys team. They play Owensboro Catholic in the tournament on Thursday. So tomorrow for us, day of release for you guys.
Yes.
Right now they're on a 4-game win streak. They average a little over 60 points per game, and I do like they have this really fun combo of Jack Sullivan, who's got 17.5 points, 6.9 boards per average, and then you've got Carson Blackburn, who's bringing about 14 to the table. They're both seniors, so I like that a lot as well. You know, they've got that momentum and that drive to finish out their high school careers on top, or at least in some big spectacular way. Okay. So Beechwood, one of those teams that you're going to be hard-pressed to miss with, to be perfectly honest. We've also got the Walton Verona Bearcats, the boys' side. They're 11-6. They play Ballard Memorial in the tournament. And all of the boys' games for the tournament are Thursday, and then all the girls are Friday, I believe.
Okay.
So to make it a little easier there. Their offense, very talented, averaging about 63 points per game. The scare with them is the defense is still coming along. They're averaging an allowance of about 60 per game.
Okay.
So stays pretty close there. And then they have a bit of a bad habit of becoming too reliant on Aaron Gutman, who is their star player, but he is a great player to be reliant upon. You know, so if you are going to kind of have those issues with the folks around him, having a guy that averages 24 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, that's not a bad option.
No, not at all.
We've got 2 more here, and the theme was, because I didn't want to just come into this with 4 teams, you know, in total in the region representing us. So I picked a couple teams that have wins over these other schools that we've already talked about to kind of, you know, weave the fabric back through there. So Cov-Cath, I would be hard-pressed to find a better team in the region, to be perfectly honest with you. They're 13-2. They average 71 points per game. They're on an 8-game winning streak. They beat Beechwood, like I mentioned, but by 4. Okay. So we know Beechwood can play them close, and that's obviously one of the scarier games, if you want to call it that, for them so far. And the offense is just a nightmare, as you could probably figure out. Athens McGillis averaging over 20, also just such a fun name. Athens McGillis, dude, that's awesome. Cash Harney averages 15, Donovan Bradley 14.7. They are all bucket getters. You have a full trio of talented kids there. And then the last one we want to talk about, Dixie Heights, the Colonels. They're 11-3 right now. Their defense kind of takes a little bit more center stage. They allow about 52 points per game. They beat Walton Verona by 20. I know I had to include this one for you because I know how much you love the 3-ball. As a team, they shoot 45.5.
Oh.
Yeah, tough one. And then the names to know, Griffin Derry, 17.6. Hunter Seng, 12.9 points, and then about 6 boards. And then Max Rubenmeyer, about 11 points, about 6 boards.
And remind me again, you said with how much are they averaging a game, or what was their...
Dixie Heights is allowing about 52 points per game.
Okay.
I don't have their offensive numbers.
Okay. See that because that's I wish you had the offensive number right there.
Yeah.
Like you shoot that many threes, and like that percentage, that's great. But are you shooting at a high enough volume for that to be great?
Now I'm pretty sure that I didn't include their offensive number because it wasn't that impressive.
Okay.
You know, because I do try to bring those top bullet points for you to know. So I want to say it was probably around 60, maybe a little lower.
Fair. Okay.
So yeah.
Which is still like, I mean, almost 10 more than what they're allowing.
Right.
I'll be real with you. I was really about to say, Cufcath.
Yeah.
Easy. But
that 3 number really threw a wrench in the thing, didn't it?
I like it. I like because if you get a good run of threes, 3-point shooters, especially in like a playoff situation, you can make a scary run.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But you can also live and die by it.
Yeah. Well, but they also have 3 people averaging above 10 points per game, so it's not entire. Well, it can be more of a hot hand situation. It's not a reliant ordeal.
Yeah, I'm going Dixie Heights.
Okay.
I like Dixie Heights here.
You know what we call that in the industry? We call that knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Presenting the stats that I know Brad will care about.
Jackson McCarty, propagandist.
Well, no, it's Brad Pushkar propaganda. I'm a good marketer, I guess.
You're the propagandist.
Okay, there you go.
I am receiving the propaganda.
Yes, you are the consumer there. But okay, so we're rolling with Dixie Heights.
Yep.
Certainly not a bad option, and we've got a fun batch of them on the girls' side as well.
Okay.
So we'll start here with Holy Cross. You're gonna love this. 18-1.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty tough to get around. The lone loss was by 1 point to Highlands.
Okay.
Singular. Uno. And to get this tournament name right, because I butchered it so poorly earlier, it is the Kentucky All-A Classic.
Okay.
So, yes. And also, I butchered the dates. It's Wednesday, Thursday, so all the girls' teams will be playing tonight.
Okay.
Well, it'll be the day after when you guys get it, but it's all the same. These teams are still going to be good tomorrow. They're playing Bethlehem in the tournament. They average about 62 points, give or take. They allow about 40.
Solid.
Yeah, so big gap there. And then the players you want to know, Amani Nelson, 15.2 points per game. She shoots just a shade under 44 from 3. And Alyssa Arlinghouse, about 10.8 points per game. And then Anaya Carter, 10.1 points per game.
Okay, I played my hand. I get it.
Like, yeah, well, no. But that was just a good number. That's just a good number. Anytime I mention a three. Listen, if you weren't already sold on them at 18-1, and their only loss being by a singular point, there's nothing I could do.
That's fair. That's fair.
Their star player shooting above 40 from 3 is not changing the tempo here. But we also have Walton Verona representing Region 9, I believe, on the girls' side. So the Bearcats over here are 12-5 on a 4-game win streak. They play Danville Christian. Each of their losses, 4 points or fewer.
Okay.
So a couple more losses, but things aren't getting any farther separate there.
No.
They average about 61 points per game any given night. It is a bit of an issue. Their 3-point shooting, it's under 30. It's 29.3. But if you're looking at star players, they've got a sophomore. I apologize. I'm not entirely sure how to say your name, but Ellen Loge is what I'm going to go with here. 15.4 points per game. Like I said, just a sophomore, so very promising athlete there. Braylon Terrell averages about 15 and 10. And then you've got Campbell Christie, 12.8 points per game. So,
very nice.
Yeah, very, very talented teams representing our region in that tournament. And then for the couple that I wanted to include over here that aren't in the tournament, mentioned them earlier, got to talk about Highlands.
Yep.
Because not only do they have a win over Holy Cross, they beat Walton Verona.
Okay.
In back-to-back games.
What more can you ask for?
Talk about a run, right?
Yeah.
13-4 right now. They allow about 44 points per game. And then your star really is Marissa Green. She gets about 13.7 and then about 6 boards any given night. But I am really interested in freshman Marin Orm. She averages 11.2 right now. And she's if I had to guess, she's probably going to not just be the future of this program, but one of the future stars in Northern Kentucky, point blank, period. And then this final one, I'll bring you Cooper, the Jags. They're 9-3. They beat Highlands by 21. So the team that has beat everybody else on our thing lost to Cooper by 21, but they also, the Jags, lost to Holy Cross by 12.
Okay.
So a real muddy mess cooking throughout this.
The circle of wins is complete. Okay.
Exactly. We're building out a nice little graphic here. They're on a 3-game win streak. They're allowing about 45 points per game. And then this is a more youthful team, I would say. This year they've got a pair of sophomores that I'm interested to see how they progress. Haley Noel has already got 14 points and then about 8 boards a night. And then you've got Olivia Scott, also a sophomore, 6.6 points, about 5 boards a night. And then they've got, some more experienced players like Zena Thompson, Addison Brissy, that are going to be there to kind of help fill that. It's a much more communal approach to basketball than I think a lot of these teams typically put out.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you can't always just have a team depend on one player.
Right.
So doing something like that is good. I'm going to go Holy Cross.
Yeah. Understandable.
You sold me at the start,
yep.
And
I had you at hello.
I definitely think that could be that'll be a team to get upset if you get into those playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out for them. But it also feels like they're that best shot at making a run towards a state title or something like that.
Just for curiosity's sake, who's number 2 on this?
I kind of liked Highlands.
That's kind of where my gut went as well.
Yeah.
Obviously it was kind of a momentum stretch for them because it was pretty early in the year as well. Not that we're not still pretty early in the year, but to knock off Holy Cross and then Walton Verona, you kind of have to catch lightning in a bottle again, hypothetically, which does kind of scare me away there.
But I think when you know how a game plan can work, then you are more likely to prepare what will work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, easy enough, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot less to keep track of than Ohio, which makes me feel bad that I have been so adamant that Kentucky needs conferences. But, it makes my life a little bit easier, ironically enough.
Hey, you know what? It just forced you to be more
innovative.
Innovative, yeah. I was going to say ingenious. Something that's not right.
I know. Well, that probably is more accurate, but
yeah, a little bit of innovation. Hey. What is this podcast if not to be reworked every single week?
Exactly.
So
yeah, you should be tuning into this not really knowing what you're clicking on. That's the goal.
We will deliver you about an hour of sports talk. That is all we can promise you each week.
Unless it's me solo, and then it's more like 30. But all right, so we've covered the high school basketball.
Yep.
Stepping it up a level now.
Obviously, we're gonna. So yeah, we've been touching in and out on college for the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. We were so in the trenches of football that you mentioned, the season's still just starting in a way for high school, but college only has about 10 games left for most teams.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you're like, we're almost at the end of the season now.
Right.
We're just a month away from championships and tournaments and all that.
Which basketball is in such a weird vacuum, catching the end of football season, and then by the time you're ready to launch into your, big tournaments, it's baseball season starting. So they're kind of in that bridge weirdness, but hard pressed to find any, end of season tournaments better than what college basketball has to offer, obviously.
Absolutely, and hey, maybe the CFP will become a 64-team one day.
Yeah, and what does it start in September?
Yeah, why not?
We just roll with the AP and don't play anything else.
Just roll with it the entire time. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to do a little check-in, a little bit of report card plays here. So we're going to start off with, we're going to talk about Xavier. Mm-hmm. Xavier is, the Big East is in a weird spot this year.
Very.
I think you go in, when we started this year, it was kind of like, UConn's probably going to do it again. Mm-hmm. You lost like Connect, or not Connect, that was Tennessee.
Yes, it was.
You lost Klingen, I believe.
There you go, yeah.
That was who I'm thinking of. Some key pieces to that national championship team, but that team was still an all-arounder that had people ready to fill the slots once they.
And Hurley's still in charge.
Yes.
That it's going to be hard to get around that.
Well, and according to him, to the ref against Butler last night, he is the best coach in the league. Now
that's a great way to market yourself.
When I saw that clip, I was like, "That's crazy, dude."
But also very Kenny Dillingham of him.
True, absolutely true.
Similar cloth.
But so I don't necessarily think that everyone expected Xavier to come into the Big East this year and win it.
No.
But I think they're sitting just below expectations in a way.
Yeah.
Right now they're 4-4 in the Big East, 12-7 overall, 3 games back from the top of the conference, which is being led by Marquette right now. But I also think that it's like Marquette, UConn, Creighton is kind of sitting in there of ooh, they might just slide up and nobody realize it.
Which is kind of a very Creighton way to do this.
I
feel like that's the habitual for them.
Yes, where you never really expect them to be doing a ton, and then it's like, oh, there they are.
It's like, oh, there's Doug McDermott, or oh, there's Baylor Shireman, or there's whatever. They always find a way.
Xavier had a tough run against Marquette, had a tough run against. Oh, it was like Marquette, UConn, back to back to start the Big East play, but they just beat Marquette.
Yes.
Which is huge.
Massive.
I think that is the kind of win that you want to start turning your team around, really get them sold into what they can do, and hopefully kind of pick things up here in this final stretch of games.
Especially considering, because it was like a 10 or a 12-point lead at half, and then they chipped it down to, it ended up being a 1-point game, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I didn't write it down in front of me, so let me double check it real quick.
Yeah.
But
either way, the Musketeers had to sit there and protect their house after building up that lead against a very talented team, and they still managed to hold on there and prevent any giant mess from happening, which is, it was a 2-point win. There you go. And, prevent this awful reality becoming real for them. Yes. So, that does tell you a lot about the quality of the team.
And I do see them sitting right now in either the first 4 or next 4 out for a lot of bracketologies. I think that's a spot that they kind of can feel okay sitting in.
Yeah.
But I do think obviously you're going to want to improve and get one of those spots before the tournament comes around.
Well, yeah, 4-4 is not where you want to be after 8 games, especially not as a team that was an AP top 25er when the season started,
yes.
And but wins like this change seasons.
Yes.
In a big, big way. So who's to say they can't rip off a handful more going into the tournament, have a good tournament run, and then actually end up being for March Madness an actually more relevant seed, if you will.
Yeah, and I told you, and we have a couple of first-year coaches that I was going to give report cards to. Well, I'm just going to turn it into all of these. Let's give a grade for all of these.
Yeah.
I think Xavier's sitting at a B- right now.
I would probably dip into the C range.
Do you think C+?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say B- C+ at low 80, high 70 percentage for a grade.
Yeah. Rounding up or rounding down, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
It's just
you still got the finals to take. You still got one more test.
Exactly. We're at midterms essentially, and right now I would be tentatively because you're right. There was too much on the line. I feel like this year to really to give too much grace, I guess, is what I'd say.
And I think there was a couple non-conference losses that I think look worse in retrospect now, like losing to UC, who I think have really fallen off since that non-conference, where they were looking like a top 15 team in the country.
Yep.
And now I don't know if they'd make I would almost maybe put Xavier in the tournament before them.
I probably would. Truth be told, as far as momentum goes, as far as confidence, just that something is going to break right for these teams, Xavier is well above that in my head.
Yes, I know they went on a the 4-game loss streak, and I think it was the game against Kansas where Wes Miller was like, "We got to turn this around. We got to change this. This is not working." And then you get the 2 wins over Arizona State, Colorado. Now you have another a 10-point loss to Texas Tech. it doesn't feel like a UC team of old.
No.
In a way that maybe wasn't necessarily leading the conference or was in that like 1 to 3 range. I mean, this is right now. I think they're just above. It's Colorado, Oklahoma State, like Kansas State, another team that they lost to.
Right.
And it's Kansas State's only conference win. It's worrisome. It's a worrisome trend to see.
Well, yeah, and it's like kind of going back to what I was saying, like for West to come out and be like, this has to change, and then that change only lasts 2 games before you drop another bad one.
Especially to 2 teams that are in the bottom section of the conference.
They're where you're at, which is not good.
Yeah.
You know, like just to be perfect, to be as blunt as I can on the situation, UC is not supposed to be where they're at. You cannot take comfort at night beating the teams that are where you are currently.
This might be mean. Their basketball team's playing like their football team.
No.
You know what I mean?
Really, since Fickle showed up, the university feels like it's changed from being a basketball school. And I know Fickle's gone now, but
yes.
For whatever reason, it feels like that momentum shifted over there and has kind of left Bearcats basketball out in the cold.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I feel like you just haven't had necessarily a coach or because there's been plenty of good players that have come through this program.
Tons.
But I think it's almost like you don't, almost arguably since Huggins in a way, you just don't always look at the coach and go, he can get us there.
Yeah, it almost feels snake bit.
Yes, absolutely. Huggins had that feeling of a Tom Izzo, of a Matt Painter, almost like I want to say Nick Saban.
No,
but like.
And you don't want to rope like Coach K into it and guys like that.
Yeah, like Calipari were a little bit different.
When Billy Donovan was around.
Yeah.
You know, at this level.
Absolutely.
Guys like that where it is just like, oh, I can go to sleep tonight. This is going to be fine.
But Big 12 feels like it's going to be Iowa State's and Houston's conference right now.
Yep.
I give UC C-.
Honestly, I think that is generous.
Yeah.
Again, but I'll roll with you on it, just because there is still time. You can still figure it out.
Yeah.
But what's being presented to us right now doesn't indicate a passing grade.
This midterm was not good.
Nope.
But
didn't study hard enough. But
but hey, we got one more test before you head to the final, and let's see what happens.
It hasn't mattered yet. You get hot at the right time, get yourself into the tournament, and it's anyone's ball game. But right now, it's hard not to recommend tutoring.
Yes. Now you mentioned the tournament. I do think a team that has a really good shot at getting in the tournament right now, and kind of snuck up on me. I'm not gonna lie, like it was something where I just haven't been checking what they've been doing as closely. Is Miami?
Yes.
They are currently 6-0 in the MAC, 14-4 overall, tied with Akron at top of the MAC. I didn't expect them to be leading the MAC this year.
They're starting to feel like a team that could make it even without winning the conference.
Yes. Now, I will say I think the MAC is at most maybe a 2-pick
them and Akron
conference. I think Ohio is still sitting. Ohio's sitting just below them. I think you can get sneaky up in there.
Right.
There's a good chance.
Maybe that should be our catchphrase.
Get sneaky up in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I did not mean to knock you out of rhythm there.
No, you're fine. But this next stretch of 3 games is a little bit of figuring out what is the MAC right now, because they're playing Akron, they're playing Eastern Michigan, who's still in the upper half, if I'm not mistaken, and then they're playing Ohio.
Yep.
You got to beat Akron, you got to beat Ohio if you want to really remain as top dog.
Yeah, that becomes your heat check. Exactly.
So I wanted to shout out Peter Suter, shooting 51.7%, 14.1 points per game, 3.4 assists a game.
Take that.
He's been just a solid all-around player for them. I'm going to be interested to see where this MAC plays out. I think this will be a fun one. I give them an A-.
That's what I was thinking. They're definitely passing with flying colors right now, just relative to expectations.
I would have expected them to be upper middle of the pack. This is above that, and I think that's good, and that's important. we'll move over now to NKU. Been struggling a little bit. 4-5 in the Horizon League, 9-11 overall. 4 games back from the top. Been kind of struggling on offense. There's one game that they have had where they scored over 80 points, while giving up 5 of over 80.
Okay.
And so it's not like every game they're getting blown out, but like I would want to see a little bit more offensive spark from, because I should also point out that one game over 80, both teams scored over 90.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's really just an anomaly, even more so than it already looks on paper.
Yes, and so you gotta start shutting down that scoring. They've played a lot of close games, but doesn't feel like it's going to be the Norse's year.
Well, and NKU is kind of a perfect example for these schools that do get harmed by the NIL setup. You know, you have your talent that you nurture and you grow and you get it where it needs to be, goes elsewhere immediately. You know, I mean, as soon as that peak season hits, they're finding somewhere else to be. So it you know, for NKU to be what was a fairly consistent tournament presence for a couple of years there, you know, now that this is starting to really take over, it's hard to imagine having too many good seasons in bulk for them.
I do think one thing with the Horizon League is that, again, like that, like kind of like the MAC. I mean, this is a champion. The champion's going to get in, and that's about it.
Right.
You know, a little different than the MAC, but still, you can't always expect every year to be the champion. But that is obviously the goal.
Correct.
I'm a little concerned that there's so many teams in the Horizon League that are bettering them right now. But I also think it's where you go from here.
Yes.
You know, even if this year doesn't work out great, do you move up to when you come back next year? Do you go, okay, we figured out what went wrong, we've got these new recruits, let's turn this thing around, kind of adjust from here?
Well, and I think the Horizon League is going to kind of end up operating on a like rotational basis where it's like, okay, this year is NKU and then, you know, 3 other teams are nurturing this year. They're developing their talent. These 4 teams are at the top of the conference. Then you just switch them the year later. This team has developed their talent to where they're going to be able to kind of press for that. This team had their talent, you know, move up to different levels or go to the league or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now they're the development. So I wonder, maybe because, you know, last year was fairly fruitful for NKU. Yep. So I wonder if maybe that's not starting to kind of go into effect.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they had a head coaching change.
Yes.
As well. So, you know, obviously that's something to account for as well.
Right.
So we'll see kind of where the Norse move from there. I'd give them a C minus.
Yeah.
You know,
I think C. It feels fine. You know what I mean? I think expectations were down relative to what everybody knew was.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected them to necessarily be leading the conference right now, and it's like here they are. I think I just wanted more.
Right.
In a way. So
yeah, it's you knew what you were ordering, but you still didn't quite like it.
Yes. So let's move over now a little bit outside of our region. I wanted to talk about Ohio State, and I want to talk about UK.
Okay.
Because Ohio State, I think, is actually getting a little sneaky in the. Wow, now
it's
now
sticking.
You're going to say it every time.
It's
I'm
sticking.
Notice it every time I say it. But they're sneaking up in the Big Ten to be a bit of a upstart.
A threat. Kind of one of those outskirt dangers, if you will.
Yes, they just beat Purdue, who had jumped around in the top 20 to, I think they were just 11 when they played them this week. But Ohio State overall 3-5 in the conference, 11-8 overall, 4.5 games back. I do not think that the Buckeyes are going to win the Big Ten this year.
No,
I don't want to. I want to make that very clear.
Yes,
but you have some guys like Bruce Thornton right now, who's been really solid, and it was. I can't remember his last name, but it's Mika, who showed up against Purdue and really put on a show. I think it was like 18 points or something like that game. kind of helped shut down Purdue's offense and things like that. Those are the guys that you want to see if you're a Buckeyes fan. You know, you should. It's also kind of notable that like their double-digit losses. They don't have many double-digit losses.
Okay.
Lost to Texas A&M early on in the non-conference. Lost to Auburn. Been number 1.
Right.
And the weird one was Maryland because it was like 70-59 or something. Like not like it was like 70-something to 59.
Right.
It was big. It was weird. I again kind of that like one of those outliers where you're like I don't really want to put that in the data set.
It feels like this was too early in the season for me to care that much.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
But in the last few weeks, you get this win over Purdue, and your losses have been Wisconsin, Indiana, Oregon, 2 points or less for each of those.
Right. All talented programs.
Yes. I mean, IU has been in a weird spot where I've seen so many people really mad, like especially IU fans, just really mad at Mike Woodson and like, what are we doing, guys?
Right.
That I think I kind of am interested to see how that whole offseason plays for them, and especially see where they end up at the end of the year. But I think for Jake Diebler, having this first season with Ohio State where they were really struggling in that the last year with Holtman, because I think it was like they lost 9 of his last 11 games before he was fired. That's this is the kind of scrappy, get some wins where it counts, and not always lose to the team that you shouldn't lose to.
Right.
That Ohio State fans are going to be wanting.
This year's not about the losses. This is about the wins, and you're establishing your culture, your roster, your whatever. As a basketball coach, that doesn't take as long, like as it does in football. With how many people are on the roster and staffs and whatnot. But if you can get away this year with being the scrappy underdog that does knock a couple Goliaths a peg or two,
I think once you get to Big Ten tournament, that's a scary team to have to face off against.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now they might get bounced in round 1 just because it wasn't in the cards, but that the team that ends up bouncing them is going to have spent plenty of hours on that game plan being like, how do we work around this? Just because there's that weird energy to it.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I gave him a B.
Yeah. I feel that's fair. I might even bump it to B+, to be honest.
So here's my reason for not.
Okay.
And it's because they're 3-5 in conference overall.
Yeah, that's fair.
If it was 5-3, yeah, I'd say B+, A-.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily think that would have been the expectation. I think also, especially with some of those losses, it's like, oh, you beat that team? That's pretty good.
Right. That's like, okay, yeah.
Deserves a little more credit.
We take that.
Whereas instead it's like, oh, you kept it close in a loss. That deserves credit, but not too much credit.
Right. You don't want to be Scott Frost.
Yes, exactly. So, I already said it. The other first-year coach, Mark Pope, at UK.
Yep.
14-4, 3-2 in the SEC. 2 games back. Obviously, this is a scary year to be an SEC team.
Horrifying.
Florida.
Yep.
Auburn, Bama, Tennessee,
Kentucky.
All have been like in and out of the top 10.
A couple of those have been number 1.
Auburn's been holding that number 1 spot for a long time. And that's part of why I'm like, wow, UK is only 3-2 with a first-year coach. Like, it's a little bit of that. I think a little bit of it is the kind of the Ryan Day effect, where a lot of people look at an Ohio State team and you go, well, yeah, what do you mean you can't win with that talent?
Right.
You still have to call the plays.
Yeah.
I think Mark Pope, it's like, yeah, he's got a lot of talent. He still has to call the plays, and it seems like he's figuring that out and knowing what to do.
He's starting to sort it out, especially because this is kind of what I've been saying to like my buddies and whatnot throughout the basketball season. The SEC basketball conference is what the SEC football conference thought it was at the start of this year.
Yeah.
It is.
No, that's really true.
It is deep. It is aggressive. It is super talented. And you are going, you could have a Final Four just of those, of teams in that conference, and I don't think anybody would be particularly shocked.
And I think the big thing is that you're having more of the eating yourself at the top.
Yep.
Where it doesn't matter as much than it did in football. But football was also like Vanderbilt was getting upsets, and Arkansas gets a weird.
South Carolina ended up being good.
South Carolina was much better than everyone expected, and like those are the kinds of losses within your conference where it's like you can't do that.
Right.
But UK losing to Florida, is like,
what's the big deal?
Oh, okay.
UT
losing to Bama.
Well, and UT losing to Bama is, or not Bama, but Vandy is the equivalent of that. But it's like the lightning has only struck once. It was striking once a week on football.
Absolutely, because you had the UK-Georgia game in football. It was all weird.
Right, constantly.
But yeah, UK's only losses right now are Georgia, Bama in conference. Bama number 4 right now.
Right.
Out of conference, it was Clemson and that Ohio State team we just talked about.
Right.
Which is another one where I'm like, oh, you beat UK. That's a good win.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. You still have 2 games with Tennessee coming up for the Wildcats.
Yep.
1 more game with Crimson Tide. 1 game with Auburn. Though again, that's kind of what we keep saying, where it's like you still got tests that you have to take.
Right, and significant tests as well.
That's like 2 quizzes, a pop quiz, and your second midterm or whatever.
And it's coming from the teacher that doesn't do that well to prepare you. You know what I mean? Like there's really no way to prepare for what's coming across your table.
Here's the pages to read.
Yep.
When you come in, it's like, wait, this wasn't in the book.
Right. It's like you gave me numbers that don't exist.
Exactly.
You just wrote down your name, and that was the pages. Like it was.
And you don't get points for writing your name, unfortunately. But one player I wanted to shout out was Otega Owe. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but I believe that's right.
We'll go with it.
15.7 points per game, 50.3 shooting percentage. But again, it's just like you got some talent on this team. I think that's solid. I'm giving Mark Pope a B+ with chance for extra credit.
Yeah.
Because I think here's the other thing. Calipari got fired. Not because of his regular season record.
It's the bracket.
It's because of when you get in the bracket, you gotta get past the first round. Arguably, you gotta get past the second round.
First round picks are cool. Universities don't care.
Yep. Especially not a university like Kentucky.
No. It's not something special to have a Kentucky player in the NBA. That's been happening for a long time.
Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina.
Right.
It's like. It's you don't. It's not a Purdue.
No.
Type thing where Purdue wants championships.
Or like when Virginia got hot, or it's not
those Virginia years. What was the other one that like? I mean, even at this point, UConn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Gonzaga. I feel like you could kind of rope them into that.
Yeah, Zaga feels a little bit like that Virginia where they had their streak. And they've fallen off just a little bit, but they're still up there competing.
They're relevant, but they're not. Yeah, what they were.
But yeah, I think he could win. I'll say this: he could win the SEC. I move him up to an A-.
Okay.
You have to get past the second round this year, or get at least to the second round, and maybe have a weird matchup with an SEC team that has been very strong and very competitive all year.
Something that just kind of unravels on you.
Yeah.
Not that you can control.
You can't lose to a St. Peter's.
No.
You can't. You can't be dropping the games that you should be winning. And I think that is where that's what the fans are looking forward to.
And not to just be negative Nelly here, but I am a little more worried about Kentucky backsliding with those 4 games, and then it affecting them into the tournament, and Pope kind of having to be like next year's our year kind of thing.
Sure.
But even with those 4 losses, they're still going to be a tournament team. You can still chip away and kind of establish what you need.
And Tennessee is like the next game. Auburn is right before the end of the season. I think that second Tennessee game is right before the end of the season. Alabama, there's some padding between Tennessee, Alabama, and then Alabama, the rest.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a game, or not necessarily 4 games where it's like, you're going to lose these back to back, and then it's like, ooh, well, what do we do now?
But that collection of them at the end of the year going into tournament is a touch bit scary.
Yes, and I think it's also you lose by 1 point in those games.
Yeah, that's a win.
Cool.
Really,
that's pretty solid actually.
As long as it's within a couple buckets, I think 6 is probably your cutoff.
Yeah, or split Tennessee.
Right.
You're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for our check-in now. We'll. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. I think we'll touch on women's basketball probably.
Yeah.
Because we have.
And then after that, probably get more actually like game specific.
Yes.
If I had to guess, because we're not that far off from doing that on the high school side either. We're getting into the weeds of it.
And sooner rather than later, we'll be talking about bracketology as well.
Yes, we will.
That'll be fun and interesting.
Get ready to watch us try to figure out this thing again.
Oh my gosh.
We'd be better off.
We're gonna fill in a bracket.
We'd be 100%. But we'd be better off like doing like a poster board at this, because I think that the lighting might do us in again. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we got a couple weeks, months. So, but yeah, thank you all for listening this week. This has been 19 on the Clock.
Yeah.
You can follow us on X. You can watch us on YouTube and the Fox 19 Now Roku app, Fire app, all that stuff. And of course, also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Our social media is in the handle and also at the bottom of the screen as we wrap up here.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Have a good one.